Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Sustaining Momentum After a Commission, a special webinar dialogue brought to you as part of ACF's Anatomy of a Commission resource. My name is Loki Karuna. I'm the executive director of the American Composers Forum, and it is my pleasure to guide today's dialogue alongside our very special guest, who I'll introduce shortly. Anatomy of a Commission, for those who don't know, is a digital resource that aims to increase transparency about commissioning processes. Rather than directing a one-size-fits-all approach, Anatomy of a Commission supports the dynamic and unique nature of commissioning from composer to composer, collaborator to collaborator. Anatomy of a Commission offers information, insights, and resources in multiple formats, including an online discussion guide, filmed conversations like these, and written articles. You can learn more about Anatomy of a Commission and check out all of its resources on our website, composersforum.org. We should have a little time today for any questions you may have, so feel free to offer those using the Q&A function here on Zoom, and we'll get to as many of those as we can following the dialogue. I'll also drop a link to a brief survey following today's conversation for you to offer any feedback that you may have on today's presentation to help us build more of these. And with that, I'm extremely grateful to introduce to you today's guest, Levi Taylor. Based in Los Angeles, Levi is an Emmy-nominated composer of film and concert music. His work is gaining rapid attention across the United States and abroad, with credits including Shark Week in 2023 and 2024, the Peacock Network's Vampire Academy, and the Discovery Channel's Sewer Divers TV series. His portfolio also includes an array of documentaries, television scores, and music for concert halls and significant events like the University of Michigan's bicentennial graduation ceremony, which was held at the Michigan Stadium. More recently, Levi received a commission from the Washington National Opera through the Kennedy Center's Social Impact Group and a commission of daydreaming for the critically acclaimed Sphinx Virtuosi Ensemble, which premiered at Carnegie Hall in October of 2024 with additional performances in 20 venues across the nation. Welcome, Levi, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for that warm introduction. I really appreciate it.
Oh,
Glad to
of
be here.
course, of course. So
Yeah.
before we dive in, what is life looking like for you these days as a composer? What are you working on? What can you share with us?
Oh, right on. Yeah. No, life is it's amazing. So behind me, you see I'm in my studio here in Los Angeles. This is Gabriel Mann's studio. He's the composer for Modern Family, and many others, and he has an amazing musical on Broadway coming out actually this month. I think April 28th, The Lost Boys. So go see it. So yeah, this is where I am right now. My composing life is great. I have, let's see, a commission coming up with the Jacksonville Symphony Orchestra. Myself and five other composers. We're doing a silent film to rec- they will be performing our pieces live to a silent film called The Flying Ace. And I am Charlotte Symphony's spotlight artist for their 26-27 season, which I'm excited about, very much excited about. I'll be working with their youth symphony and got a couple of premieres happening. Well, one premiere with the major symphony and a couple other pieces happening with them as well. Let's see. And I have a film coming out. I'm not quite sure when the premiere is going to be. Right now, we're going to the film festivals, but you can check it out. The website is 3blackmen.com. I'm very excited about that film. It's a documentary that I recently scored. And and I just came back from Portland, Maine, doing some work with Palaver Strings. So quite a bit actually on my plate, just all over the place.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, congratulations on all of that work.
Thank you.
So, the first thing I wanted to get into is the idea of support organizations and the many support initiatives out there for composers, especially composers from marginalized backgrounds. There are many of those programs out there, but you seem to forego all of those, dare I say, traditional channels for a
Right.
for the career that you've developed. I wonder if you could talk about how you got started and the strategies you engaged to get on, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. My my trajectory, my path has been very non-traditional from the very beginning. I will say I didn't start taking piano lessons until I was around 12 years old. And um, I think it's here's what it is. I think it's been the same kind of like since then, like incredibly passionate and hardworking at what I do. And at some point somebody notices. So when I was that age, they said, "Oh my gosh, this dude's been playing piano by himself, teaching himself, and he's gotten to a point where he can play all this music. He needs a teacher." So the people start introducing me to teachers, right? And then all of a sudden, I'm doing well. I entered NAACP's AXO competition. I won first place national for that, and second place. Um, so I won twice nationally and regionally, won 3 times. And at some point, somebody was like, "Hey, you need to go to Interlochen Arts Academy." Right? It's like, okay, because I didn't grow up with a family or a community that understood any of this.
Hmm.
It was all on my own, all because it's really what I wanted to do. And so every now and then somebody would say, "Hey, you're working really hard and you're showing up and you're positive. Here's the thing that you can try." Right? And so fast forward to, gosh, well, right. So you mentioned the University of Michigan's bicentennial. I think it was around that time, around 2017. Um, I'm teaching, so I was teaching piano lessons in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Had about 50, 60 kids a week. I was doing nonprofit work, board of directors for Big Brothers Big Sisters, and yeah, all these various things I was doing. And one of the parents that I was working with said, "Hey, I've heard you write music. We've got some stuff going on with University of Michigan. Send us some music and we'll see if we can use your work." And sure enough, they liked it. So I wrote for the bicentennial. And then I met Aaron Dorkin, right? So Aaron was a dean at the School of Music at the time, right? And so then I started asking him questions about nonprofits because I was thinking about building my own stuff because I was really, really understanding my pathway. I didn't have access to teachers, to teachers who studied music. My piano teacher was a chemist,
Hmm.
right? Yeah. So, so like from the beginning, I was like, I want to be somebody to give to give others what I couldn't have it growing up. So I'm asking Aaron Dorkin, well, how do you do nonprofits? Like, what do I do to create something where I can like help kids get piano lessons? And he's just, yeah, meeting with me here and there, and showing me some things to do. And I think through growing that relationship, I began, obviously I figured out, they introduced me to Sphinx, and I began to just get to know the organization a little bit, got to know Aaron and Afa, and just started asking them tons and tons of questions. And they're seeing what I'm doing in other spaces. So I think, long story short, I think that that's really it. It's just just keep showing up and doing your thing with authenticity and honesty, and hard work, and just at some point somebody says, "Hey, you should try this," or "Hey, there's an opportunity you should try," or I think that's really it.
Yeah,
Keep
I try to help composers all the time figure out the right rooms to be in or the right
Yeah.
conversations to have. But what I'm hearing you saying is that simply being busy doing what you're doing can lead to certain conversations, can lead to your being in certain rooms.
And that's, yeah, I think that's the gist of it. And that's one, and I think that's one avenue. I'm not saying that that's the necessarily right avenue for everybody. And actually, maybe it's not even the most efficient avenue, right? And that's partly why perhaps people go to these, like, the bigger institutions that have already, created these channels that, hey, you just work hard and show up, and now here you go kind of deal. But I didn't have that, right? So for me, it was really just keep showing up in all the places. And yeah.
So when we get to the point where you're in certain spaces, people are learning your name, they know that you're a composer, it's important to translate that awareness to the actual commission, to the actual work. I wonder in retrospect, what conversations felt most useful to get you to those actual commissions?
Right. Look, obviously, there's going to be a lot of conversations, right? And the top of mind, actually, believe it or not, are the ones that said no.
Hmm. Say more about that.
Yeah, the ones that were like, "Well, we don't have anything for you," like, "We don't understand what you're trying to do." Like, because that makes me think about, well, what is it that I'm not sharing, or what is it that they want, or what is it that I'm missing? So yeah, like, and to kind of deal with, it's so funny because especially I'll say my temperament. um, Not growing up in the institutions and not having support, in the traditional kind of way, you often go in, and I'm saying this so that if there's other people who might resonate with this, they can understand. you walk into these spaces and you say, well, what's wrong with me? Or what haven't I done? What do I need to do? And then they'll remind you, no, it's not about that. It's not about you at all. It's really like we commission in this specific kind of way,
Hmm.
right? And so when you bump up against that, you actually get the information that you need. Um, so I think that that was really, really helpful for me. Um, Let me think. Other conversations.
Maybe there are conversations that give you insight on some of the nuts and bolts of what you're composing as far as its utility. One of the things, for example, that I have to think about all the time when I'm proposing things to partners is instrumentation.
Mm,
A piece of music that requires 20 percussionists is likely going to get more no's than a piece that doesn't. So some of those nuts and bolts as well is what I face when I'm advocating.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think from the gate, especially the people that I would speak to, I've always been very excited about writing for the orchestra.
Hmm.
I love orchestral music. I love Maurice Ravel and and Prokofiev and like all these composers that just like how they think about lines and instrumentation and stuff like always been enamored by that. So I think that in the conversation of commissions and more specifically, I'll put it this way too. I've not been the guy to go into every room saying, "Hey, commission me," which that's something I'm learning to do more of.
Hmm.
But to get more into the room and say, "God, I love this. I love this community. I love doing this thing." And then people start. I think when you speak in possibility, right? When you speak in love and possibility of the things you're doing, I think people want to connect to that and see how they can be connected, and especially if you're already doing some cool stuff. So, I think the opera with the Kennedy Center, just people saw him like, oh yeah, he can write clearly, right? He does good work, and now the possibility of doing something together becomes, possible. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
yeah, and I want to talk about how
Mhm.
specifically the Sphinx
Mm.
performances and commission led to additional work. What was this
Yeah,
opportunity to have a work performed about the Sphinx virtuosity? Was this the big break? How did this happen?
yeah. Well, I think it was. So there were a few moments that I had written music, and Aaron, I think Alpha had heard some of the pieces I had written, and I was telling Alpha over and over and over, man, like I want to do this, I want to do this, and I think I don't know at what point, but they were creating their tour, and my name came up. It was like, hey, I think maybe Levi could be, maybe let's talk to Levi and see if he's interested. That's my recollection is.
And for people who may not know, Alpha Dworkin being the artistic director of the Sphinx organization and the Sphinx Virtuosi Ensemble.
Right. So, they like hey, maybe Levi might be, somebody who can commission for a piece. And so I think we just started the conversation. And I wrote this piece and they were excited about it. Right. And so much so like the original idea was to have just one performance of this piece. And they liked it so much they were like, no, we want to take this piece on tour. Right. So that was wonderful. Um, and once that happened, once I realized the piece was going to be on tour, and nobody knew who I was necessarily in the concert world, I wanted to make sure to get out there a little bit more. So I started finding a list of names of people, of orchestras in each of these cities that they stopped at. And the idea for me was to just start sending out a bunch of emails when I go to the city. Hey, I'm in your city. There's this piece. Sphinx of Virtuosi is performing this piece. I'd love to get you tickets. Come in and we'll have to make an introduction. And I sent out. Couldn't tell you how many emails I sent out, um, and didn't get replies for most of them.
Hmm.
Right? And when some of the ones I did get reply was like, oh, congratulations, and wish you all the best. But unfortunately, we're busy. Got a lot of that. I'm not even sure that anybody. I think there was one performance where one person was going to come and then they got booked and they couldn't come. Right. So not really anything came of it necessarily, except I really truly believe that people like my name got out there. People knew I was this guy doing this thing. So, for example, when I went to the Charlotte Symphony, right, and I sent out emails to them, and then afterwards we had a little reception, and I went right up to the president, shook his hand, and said, "I would love to write for your orchestra sometime."
Hmm.
You know, Yeah, right, just right there. Like, because I was really impressed by the orchestra, the community. Um, Carlos Simon had a piece that night, and I'll never forget like the way that the whole orchestra just like came alive. It was really fantastic. Yeah.
So it sounds like while the cold call emails were important, an important part of your process, what ended up actually being effective was being in front of the person
Yes.
live in
I think
person.
so. I think so. And I'll say specifically even for me, because I think I do better meeting people. Like my personality is very much like I do well with in person. Like just I like just showing up, and just being yourself with people. It's harder, I think, to do that over email. If people are busy, I don't know. So I don't think that my email is maybe not, as good as being in person, perhaps.
I mean, and it's different for every person,
Yeah.
how to really get into that conversation. But I wonder if you could speak more
Mhm.
specifically into the nuts and bolts of how you make that approach. I mean, do you,
Mm.
surely you don't interrupt conversations that are
No.
going on, but, as a part of, the long-term goal of getting that commission, what is that first handshake, that first hello like? How do you do that? How do you do it?
That's a great question. And I think that this is very, very important. I truly believe in this, right? So, anecdotally, we're all told, right? It's kind of the many irons in the fire thing, right? Send out all the emails, all the cold calls, and all this stuff, put all that effort out. And I agree with that because, again, it's like people start to know that you're out there is important. However, and I'm dealing with this in Hollywood, by the way, too, with film and television. People are saying, well, to go out and meet directors, just go to this, go to USC and or go here or there and just stand in front of like wherever directors are and just like meet all the directors you can. It's like, okay, fine. You do that, and yes, people will start to know you and everything. But it's always, to me, something about the personal connection. And I think when you have somebody to introduce you or something that you've done that introduces you, that creates a personal connection. It always, when somebody vouches for you, I feel like that is so much more important. When somebody speaks your name in a room that you can't go in, or for example, when you go to these receptions and there's the president of the Charlotte Symphony Orchestra, and you're standing next to somebody like Andre Dow, you know,
Hmm.
and you're like, hey, I don't know. It creates the synergy where they understand who you're with or who or what you've done, and so when you reach out, it's not this cold call. It's not this what do you want kind of thing. It's like, oh, we're already in this together kind of deal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And of course, that work doesn't happen right then and there. This commissioner,
Right.
this artistic director of this orchestra isn't going to put their drink down at the reception and get on the phone to
Right.
start to make plans. So I wonder if you could speak a little bit about the follow up. You're at the reception, you're at the conference, you have a great conversation with someone. What are the important steps the next day, the next week, the
Yeah.
next month to make sure that you're staying top of mind?
I'm still working that out, honestly, because what I'm finding is that different people have different kind of receptions to that. Because it's absolutely true, and I'm actually similar to this. When people approach me right in the moment, and this actually, case in point, when I first started writing music for Faber and Faber, right? This is something that most people don't know about, but when I first moved to Ann Arbor, gosh, around 2007, 8, around that time, I went to what is it called? There's a piano pedagogy conference. I went there and met Randy Faber, right? And Randy Faber is this kind of guy, amazing. So Faber and Faber, Randy Faber is Randy and Nancy's began Faber and Faber books. And I went right up to Randy and said, "Wow, we're from Ann Arbor. I'm a composer. I'm a piano teacher in the area. Would love to do some kind of work with you." Immediately, right then, he pulls his phone out, says, "I'm so glad you reached out. I'm so glad you connected because we just lost somebody and we're looking for somebody new." Sent an email to his director or the project director, and we immediately start the conversation, right? So I think that there are people who will do that in the moment, and I'm one of those type of guys too, because it's like I don't. If you let it sit, it can kind of go away.
Sure.
And then there are others. Yes, you need to do a follow up like within the next 24, 48 hours. Absolutely. Hey, it was great to have met you. This is what we talked about. We'd love to take this conversation further. So I always try to do that, especially a lot of the networking events I go to out here. Absolutely make sure to do that. There are some moments where I've met people and they said, real talk, they're like, hey, follow up with me within like a month because I'm busy right now. And you do it. You do it exactly when they say to do it. And sometimes it works out well and sometimes it doesn't. Like I think I've done that before where I followed up exactly when they asked me to, and for some reason the connection was missed.
Hmm.
That, yeah. So I just want to say that I think that it's different for every person, but the key is what you're saying. You just be proactive, follow up, make initiative, make an action right away.
We talk a lot about making these connections with,
Hmm.
again, the artistic directors, the funders, but it sounds like for you, making connections with other composers has also been very important. We don't always think about our peers as pathways to
Yeah.
opportunities, but specifically, you brought up the name Carlos Simon earlier. I wonder if you could talk about maybe specifically as it relates to Carlos or other composers, how the peer to peer networking
Yes.
offers a pathway to opportunities, commissions.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and yeah, specifically because I don't. I'm glad you brought that up because I don't. This whole idea of competition and ego, within our field, and the scarcity mindset, I want to get away with that. Like, and it's we're all doing the same thing. We're all creating great art, and I think there's plenty of room for all of us. So I guess in that spirit, what I think tends to happen is some people get really busy, right? So you have your peers, you have your friends, you have great relationships. It's not about making friends so that they can do something for you, but you
Hmm.
just make community. Like that's very, very important. And I think within community, that just tends to be what happens. Like an opportunity shows up, I can't take it, but I know somebody who can, right? And I think that happens a lot. Or it might be, ooh, like this almost happened with myself and another composer recently. She was like, I got this opportunity to have somebody come on board with me on this project. And I thought of you immediately, Levi, because I don't know, we just hit it off well. That's literally what was it. It wasn't like, I like the way you orchestrate this thing. It's like the assumption is already done. Like you've done the work, you can do great work. It's, I want to collaborate with you. You're my community. So I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah, I hate to boil it down just to simply say people have to like not just your music, but they
Yeah.
have to like you as well. But that's I think that's what I hear you saying.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, and I'll be real, like, especially out here in Hollywood, we talk about this a lot, and I hear people talk about it in DC in different ways. It's like you get to these industries, right? You're trying to crack the nut, you're trying to get in, and I have my own critiques about like capitalist society, but it's like, what can you do for me? Attitudes that people kind of like, what network do you have, or what this that, it's like, no, like before all of that, we're people, we're community, and we need each other. Maybe it's just a coffee and hang out, and I hear what you're doing and it sounds great, right? I think that in person, and this might be why like in person works really well with me, because I'm not out trying to get something from somebody. I'm trying to create relationships, and then from relationships you create together, right? Very important, I think.
So as artists, it's not just a responsibility to be ourselves as far as our personality, but to be
Yeah.
ourselves musically, to be ourselves artistically, not to fit into a box or into a frame where our art might not be able to thrive. At the same time, when it comes to commissions and commissioning processes, there are expectations or frameworks that a funder or an institution may come to the table with. Again, I'll bring up instrumentation. If a presenter wants to commission for a chorus or for a string quartet, you can't show up with a piece for percussion ensemble.
Right.
That's an obvious example. But I wonder if you could talk on a more nuanced level about how you match your artistic identity with the expectations of collaborative partners.
Yeah, that's really good. I have not received any projects and, expectations of my artistic and, technical ability that I've not been excited about. right? And I think that speaks to my desire to have range, to have skills, to meet challenges. Um, and I think that all of that informs who I am as an artist, right? I don't feel like I necessarily need to be this one very niche thing um, to express my identity, to express my artistry. Um, so I think that serves me well, and especially in the world of like film and television, right? We're here to in a very collaborative sense. So egos are checked at the door. You can still be an artist, right? As a matter of fact, in some cases, it's like, yeah, that's what they want. They hired you because they want you. They want your
Hmm.
work. They want that. Um, and and you can serve by also allowing them or your collaborators to have a voice in the process. Um, yeah, that I don't know. There's not been any problems. Nobody's ever asked me to do anything that felt out of character, or I don't know if that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, and when you talk about having that excitement
yeah,
about every project, my sense is that that isn't just, oh my gosh, I have this I have this commission. It's so exciting, but I have to demonstrate that I'm excited. I have to demonstrate that this is something that I want to do. I wonder how important that is for from your perspective. If I'm commissioning a
yeah.
composer, I want to write the piece. I want them to feel like this is something that, they're going to have fun with on some level and not just another task, another thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's what, and I think Alpha. I have it on my website. I don't remember what the quote is exactly, but Alpha said something about how she enjoyed working with me, and I was really grateful that she allowed me to put that quote up. Um, and this is similar in other process in other projects I've done. It's like lead with the air of possibility, right? If people are asking something of you, and your wall is up immediately, well, that doesn't fit in within my artist. You're like, well, okay, that's not possibility, and that limits the amount of things that we can do. But when you have kind of like this open, like, we can create something really cool together. There's possibilities, there's agency, I don't know. I think in general, everybody just wants to be a part of that, and it just makes a really great collaboration for sure.
I want to take a couple steps back. We talk about your works for the concert stage. You also do a lot of work in film, television, the more commercial side. Are these the same groups of people that you're talking to, that you're networking with? How I wonder if you could talk a little bit about those differences.
Incredibly different, just completely opposite. And yeah, they don't know about each other. It's been actually exciting. My agent out here, it's so funny. I tell him about some of these exciting things I'm doing in the concert where he's like, okay, yeah, sure, well, all right, you know, and then vice versa. Unfortunately, I do believe that these worlds are going to collide a little bit more. I think we're starting to see how. Well, that's a whole nother conversation, but um, yeah, it's very, very different. And I'll say it's been really that's probably been one of the hardest things. I'll say that because you need to do the same amount of work in each. I've needed to do the same amount of work in each field. So networking out here in Hollywood, meeting people, following up, doing the emails, being excited about the projects, getting it done on time, right? And then doing that also in the concert world. Um, and I'll say this, like, I'm really fortunate. I think that to make a living in one or the other is incredibly difficult as a composer, right? And so to have both actually makes it a little bit, it's hard, incredibly hard, but it makes it a little bit easier to do, right? Or more possibility to do, I should say. Um, but yeah, it's very challenging. They don't intersect, um, and you just have to do everything twice, you know.
Does it how important is the geography, I think, on either side of that discussion? I imagine living in Southern California
Yeah.
plays a big role on the commercial music side in the same way that living in New York may offer, different opportunities on the concert side. Can you speak to that?
Well, and this is why I think that the worlds might be colliding, because you have like people like the L.A. Chamber Orchestra, right, who commission film composers um, to score, during their concert series, right? Um, I don't necessarily know the world of New York necessarily. I do feel like there's in general, right? There's the more of the commercial side in LA and more of the whatever artistic concert side in New York. But when I tell you, I know so many film composers, people doing media work in New York. Um, I don't know what the collaborations are with them in the concert world, but you take somebody like Tamar Kali, dope, incredible composer, right? She's just brilliant, and she's just doing all of it out there in New York, just crushing
Hmm.
it. I'm like, yes, like one of my sheroes for real, for real. Um, so I don't know. I think that the worlds can collide. I think that they do. I think really, real talk. I think the only limitations are ourselves when we put ourselves in these boxes and say, this is as small as this is going. I don't know. Like this is much. Like I genuinely believe that people want to connect, and industries want to connect. I think we all want to just do great work together. I really do.
Now, of course, we are a Minnesota-based
Hmm.
organization, based in neither Southern California nor New York, even though
Right.
we have, programming nationally. I wonder if you could speak to that middle ground. I mean, you did, after all, have a lot of success in Charlotte, in Michigan, in these
Yeah.
geographies that aren't necessarily seen as these hubs.
Yeah.
What pushed that forward?
Good question. Um, I know that I think it's more of a network thing. So I'll put it this way. It feels like for example, the networks I've embraced here in Los Angeles will take a little bit more risk,
Mm,
right? I don't not sure so much about Midwest or these other locations. I think they from what I don't I want to be very careful because everybody has their own way of programming and I don't know the details of all of it. I guess what I want to say is that it's always been because of some network or somebody who's vouched for me or some connection I've had that somebody said, hey, look, meet this artistic director or, go to this orchestra and try this thing out, and it just pushes the conversation forward. In Los Angeles, it's a lot easier for me to come out. And it might be because I've done a few things that people recognize. It's just a lot easier for me to show up. Like I work with the Academy, right? I did the Kennedy Center thing. Um, so I'm not sure I have an answer to that. I guess what I'm getting at, but in those spaces, I found that I just kind of need somebody or who knows me and can make an introduction.
yeah, yeah. I have to ask one of the maybe more challenging
Mm,
questions now.
mm,
And before I do, just as a reminder, if you have any questions for Levi, feel free to use the Q&A function here on Zoom. We've mentioned the Kennedy Center a few times. We talk about artistic priorities and our artistic expectations between the creator and the institution. I wonder about the values piece. There are so many institutions that may be challenging to some composers, may challenge our own sense of self in other ways. I wonder how you personally balance or engage that side of the collaborative, even the commissioning process, working with institutions who you may not completely align with. Do you focus on, I'm here to do the commission, I'm here to do this thing? Do you have that broader perspective? How do you engage that side of it?
I have, and I'm still, in a lot of senses, believe it or not, I still feel like I'm an emerging kind of composer in the concert world, right? So in terms of institutions or organizations in that space, um, I've not gotten to the point where I had to like deal with that kind of conflict.
Hmm.
It's actually been very, very fortunate. Like everybody I've so far dealt with has been very excited to work with me, and very generous in the space created to do the work. Now the Kennedy Center piece, we yeah, it's unfortunate, man. We got canceled right after our performance. So leading up to the performance was amazing, and then after that, everything kind of like we lost it. So I didn't necessarily have to deal with that Um, yeah, and in terms of like Hollywood, like yeah, again, it's like I've actually been quite fortunate. Like I think all the projects I've worked on, people have just been very excited to work with me, and I think again, it's like just relationships, and I guess I don't take every single project that comes my way. That's also it too, right? You kind of know who you are and what communities you want to work with, and um, while the answer is not necessarily no, it's well, I have this other thing going on that I want to focus in on. And I think
Sure.
that's kind of key. It's not to have walls and all the stuff, like defiance towards something, but to really let your personality and your work exude what you're excited about, what you love, right? And I think
Hmm.
again, like leading in those areas, I've been very fortunate. Like even just like I said, this studio I'm in, I was telling actually literally today, I was telling the guy, I was like, how fortunate I was to end up in a studio of like some of the biggest hearted people I know in Hollywood. When you just hear all the horror stories about people who just want to like whatever, right? That's thankfully not my experience.
Right. Well, good for you.
Right?
And speaking of those horror stories, I think we also have to talk about identity. We've said a lot in this conversation, people wanting to work with you, putting your best self forward. It's not lost on you, I'm sure, that many people don't just see a composer, but in your case, they see a black composer when you walk into the room, which may help them think about what they want this Black History programming to be, or
Yeah.
maybe in their mind that limits what you may be able to do. There have been many conversations about how or even if composers should leverage their identities as a part of the commissioning process, as a part of creating partnerships and collaborations. I wonder what's your take on this conversation. What would you say to a composer who leads with identity, or maybe uncomfortable with the idea of leveraging identity toward a commissioning process?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it's all a conversation. Everything is a conversation. And I tend to think that the people who are having the conversation want to be in conversation. So let's get the boogeyman out of there. It's like just have the conversation. Like, identity is part of the conversation. I don't think it's something to necessarily shy away from. You're funny because as you were asking the question, I've immediately thought of when it's back when I was in Ann Arbor teaching mostly. I went to this holiday party, and this woman approached me. She was working at the university in social sciences, and she's like, "Hey, I hear you're a piano teacher." I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Oh, how many students? Da, 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 what are you teaching?" Like, she's like, "So do you teach all your students jazz?" It's like, "Well, actually, most of them, we all do this classical repertoire. We, favor and favor, and go into the RCM, and we do all this repertoire." Yeah, but at what point do you take them to jazz? And I'm like, well, actually, jazz is a very specific thing, and if the students are interested, then maybe I'll, start. But it's a whole other thing. And she kept going and going. Then finally, she was like, wait a second, I'm doing a thing I tell my students not to do. And here's the reason I'm bringing it up is because it's a conversation. We especially race in this country, it's the trigger point, right? And we want to immediately go left or right instead of just recognizing sometimes it's not going to be a perfect conversation. Actually, oftentimes it's not going to be a perfect conversation. But the point is they want to be in conversation with you. There's something about you that's really special, right? And yes, it can be if we're not authentic in our pursuit of the conversation, it can go off the rails and now you're doing something that doesn't feel good.
Hmm.
But if you are, present, you've done the work, you're authentic, and you're like, yeah, I'm a black composer and I grew up in the gospel church, and these things absolutely have an influence on me and my music. You want to have that conversation? Okay, great. Right? I just think that we don't why limit ourselves all the time?
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
know?
and to your point there, I want to make sure that I touch on the other side of it. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm a composer who isn't necessarily versed in jazz, and this person with lots of money or lots of connections says, "Oh, hey, I would love for you to write something. I'm familiar with your work. Maybe you can have some jazz influence." I feel like I would figure out how to make that work,
There
and
it is.
instead of necessarily saying no, that's not what I do. You're making assumptions, and I know there are
Yeah,
boundaries and sensitivities
yeah,
around everything, but just pulling on the thread that you've presented around not creating limitations for ourselves.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, exactly. Not creating limitations and being authentic. It's like I'm not going to write, be real talk. Like, even though I grew up in the gospel church, I'm not going to write gospel music the way somebody who does gospel music all the time does. But for me to go in and do it in a way that feels like Levi, that was the task,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm honored to get to be asked to do that task, right? Um, Now, again, like, I have conversations all day long about what I love and what I'm excited about, right? So I think, again, it's like your community will show up for you, right? So if I'm out here talking about gospel music all the time, then perhaps that's going to be more of the conventions that I get.
Mm-hmm.
Talking
Mm-hmm.
about how much I love orchestration, perhaps that's going to be more of what I'm going to get. And within that, perhaps people are going to ask me, "Hey, Levi, they're going to make assumptions. Do you do gospel music? Do you do jazz?" You're just like, "Yeah, sure, I can take a look at that. I also do this. I also do this. Ooh, what
Mm-hmm.
if these things can blend together?" Right? Or, hey, actually, I know this great gospel singer. What if I wrote this thing, had this gospel singer on top of it? Right? I mean, it's just, again, don't limit yourself. People want to be in conversation. They want to create something magical together. So do it.
And with the assumptions and
Mm,
conversations about identity aside, I
mm,
think about folks like the late Quincy Jones, who,
mm.
in my view, could easily write for a jazz orchestra as
Right.
easily as a movie score, as easily as a solo piano work. Just someone with a very broad set of skills.
Yes.
As you're so busy with all of your commissions, all of the work that you're doing, what does broadening your skills look like? I'm sure you're not sitting in a classroom, but how can you continue to grow while you're managing and juggling all these commissions and opportunities?
Huge, huge. That's huge. Now, I'll also say, I don't have kids. So there's things that you have to create or, sacrifice, or I don't know that I don't want to speak too quickly because, like, I know a dope composer out here who works, and she had kids and she's doing the whole thing. So it's really, you create your own life that you want to live, and find out where you need to make sacrifices. But so my kind of practice here, often I come to the studio. First thing I do is go down to our live room where we have this beautiful Yamaha C7 piano. And the first thing I do is I start off with my Bach and I start playing Bach, or run scales for scales and arpeggios. I literally will just put a metronome on and just like do that until my mind starts to kind of develop ideas and I'll start improvising. And sometimes I'll just do counterpoints, sometimes I'll do whatever R&B, sometimes I'll go into a jazz idiom. And I feel like that's part of it really is just exploring all of the things that excite me and continuing to broaden that range. I've got a lot of friends out here. It's like the more friends, the community. I just came last night. We had the Composer Diversity Collective had a great string, kind of a party, string mixer, where all these composers wrote these pieces for a string quartet,
Hmm.
right? And you heard all of these different types of music. It was great. Like there was some Southeast Asian some music, there was some Latin American music. Somebody wrote something in the style like Shostakovich and Prokofiev. Some film music. It was just all over the place, right? And you get these people all in one room, and you start creating together. I think that's just part of it. Like I have a friend out here every now and then. Well, for real, like go till 2 in the morning, sight reading Bach fugues and preludes. I'm doing the left hand, they're doing the right hand, and then we'll grab some WC, then we'll grab some John Williams. It's just, it's yeah. That's how I kind of keep myself um, just engaged, so I can do broader things. I don't know if that yeah, just doing
Yeah,
the
yeah.
thing, doing the
So
thing.
so I wonder, just sort of to come full circle, how
Mm,
does the discovery phase that you talked about earlier in this
mm,
conversation, being busy, playing the or teaching the piano lessons, being in this spaces, how does that show up now? I guess similar to what you were just
yeah,
speaking to. I mean, everyone hopes and dreams of focusing on composition, and that's all you do. But it's my sense that having, arms in other places can be beneficial. I think a lot about the composers who also have faculty positions at schools and how they leverage that. I used to have conversations with the composer Curtis Stewart all the time. He talks about how when he was teaching high school, yes, he was a high school teacher and he had an orchestra there that he could write anything for. That was his own personal lab orchestra. I wonder if you can speak to pulling opportunity from the necessity to fill in the
Mm,
gaps where the commissions don't necessarily live or
that is
exist.
beautiful. Cause yeah, that's beautiful. Like the whole thing is about. I like this. Laura Cartman is another hero of mine out here, and she said it one day. She's like, because we all want to do that, right? Where we're doing the thing, we're writing that piece, and that's my life now, right? Just doing that one thing, and not to say like I'm sure like I thought of that as well. But she once said she was like, no matter what that context looks like, if you're doing it, you're doing it. You're doing more than most, actually. You're right. So if you're writing music and you're teaching or you're doing XYZ to pay the bills, you're still doing the thing. And the most important thing to me, especially what I'm finding out here in Hollywood, the people who make it the furthest are the ones who last the longest.
Hmm.
Right. So if you're doing the thing while, supporting yourself in other ways, like for example, again, like I was teaching all these kids in Ann Arbor, and somebody was like, "Hey, I see you're a composer. Would you like to write for the University of Michigan?" I'm like, well, of course I would, right? And it's similar out here. Like I think it's yeah, you'll find opportunities. I think again, it's just if you're authentic, if you're pursuing it. I'm not the type of person that I want to go on all the vacations and all the food tours and all the things. Like, no, I want to do the thing, right? So while I'm teaching, right, and I still teach, by the way, while I'm doing nonprofit work, I just joined the board for Composer Diversity Collective. It's while you do those things, you pursue. You have that appetite, you have that desire, and I just think things will continue to show up for you, and as you show up for it.
Beautiful,
Absolutely.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give our audience just a couple more minutes to ask any questions they may have as we begin to wrap up. But just a couple more questions from my end. I wonder if you could speak to sharing your work, and I know that every orchestra has their own IMA, their own agreement with their musicians as far as what can be done with recordings. I'm sure that's a whole thing in Hollywood that I don't necessarily have much familiarity with. But what does that look like? You're approached by the artistic director of an orchestra. I wonder if you can speak to what sharing your past works has looked like and what those limitations are. There are things posted on your website, as I have seen, maybe not downloadable, but yeah. Anyway, speak to the sharing your work aspect and keeping yourself out of trouble.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Keep yourself out of trouble, please. um, I have so yeah, my website needs to be updated by the way with some of them with more stuff that I want to share actually. Um, for example, the film I just finished, I just can't share anything of it. It's just what it is, right? And I'm excited. I can't wait to share because I wrote so much music for that project. But I think it's just everything in its own due time. Like obviously there's contracts that you sign that say what you can and can't share. So that's number one. That's number one. But even outside of that, um, I feel like there's again, you're building community, you have relationships, and for example, with the documentary, I think there are absolutely some things that I can share. Without getting into the contract reason why. Um, but before I even did that, I went to the director and said, "Hey, look, I want to share this. Are you okay with me sharing this? Like, what is your timeline for sharing what you want to share? And I think that part of it is important too. We all want to put our best foot forward and share everything with everybody, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's a collaboration. I think. I will say though, often orchestras and directors that I've worked with will say, "Yeah, feel free to share in the back channels." So there's some things that I have, like Disco is what I use to share my reels with different organizations. Um, and so as long as it's just like this back kind of thing, like it's not forward fronting, like general public can't see it, but
Hmm.
I'm right there with the direct. Like I just shared actually the feature film with somebody that we're hoping will help us get into a film festival, right? So those are okay, I think. But
And where do you draw for, for people who may not know, where's the line drawn between what can be shared and what can't? So for example, if you write something from scratch today,
mhm.
you can put that on your website. You can share that with as many people as you want. At what point does that thing turn into something that has restriction? Is it the signing of the
Yeah,
contract? Can things, does that happen in the development phase? Does it happen once things are submitted? Where is that red line?
that's all based on contracts, and yeah, I don't know that answer honestly because I don't want to put anybody in like a sticky situation.
Sure.
I stay away from it, right? So if I do share that kind of stuff, because especially you think about social media, right? Hey,
Exactly.
look at me as I compose, the intro, this idea to this thing I'm doing. And yeah, that's very tempting to want to share that with the world. Like this is not even the final thing, but it's just my ideas into it. Um, I think there's something sacred about that. I personally don't want to share that. I might share what it looks like without the audio. like,
Okay.
I might do something like that. Um, I like, yeah, and I could be wrong. Might want to check in with other people, but in general, first of all, refer to the contract, and second of all, think about the relationship, right? If the orchestra, the artistic director, or the director wants to kind of like build up anticipation for this thing, don't do it. Just share some other stuff. Write something new.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
write something new. You're amazing. yeah.
Well, there is one question from the audience that
Mm.
I'll offer to you. This person asked, when breaking into the film side of things, did you originally have intention to pursue film composition, or was it a project that you were sought after for? So again, for that very first opportunity, did it happen? Were you having conversations that led to film music into specificity?
Yeah, my actually interestingly, since gosh, high school, my dream was always actually film and TV,
Hmm.
right? NAACP, the AXO thing that I did, I met Kamara Kambon, who is like an incredible composer, and I was like, wow, this actually you can do this. Um, um, and I also love concert music, so that's a whole nother thing. Um, but to get that first film thing, so I actually kind of did leading to what you were talking about at the very beginning of the traditional route, like I applied to everything. I
Hmm.
put my name on everything. Like when during COVID, right, when the world opened up a little bit, and Hollywood was like, okay, let's just see who else is out there. I was able to start having conversations with people. Like I joined the Composers Diversity Collective, and I started joining organizations and started applying to just anything. All of the I did VIF Amp. Um, Now I did the Jonas Guan Guan initiative with the Academy. So at some point, I was just putting my name on everything that I could. I was writing, submitting for grants, like I can't even tell you. And I got no for like, I'd say good 80% of the stuff. So you'll never even hear about all the stuff that I applied for. But through that, um, I started getting opportunities. And then here's what happened. I started updating my website with like these things that I got opportunities for. And they weren't even like films. They were just, oh, I'm doing this fellowship or this thing's happening. And then all of a sudden, people are going to my website and then contacting me or my agent saying, hey, look, we want to hire this guy for our film. Can we afford him? Literally.
Hmm.
like,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So I think that, and as far as film goes, like that's part of like how the process. And then I should also add way before I moved out here to Hollywood and got films here, I did Me the Other in Michigan, which was a great documentary. And that was just kind of like through my network family. They knew what I did and introduced me to somebody.
I'm notorious for thinking of big questions when there's a little time left. So, answer to the best way you can.
Okay, okay.
You just mentioned, people reaching out to you and asking that question. Oh, wow, can we afford him? When you're getting these initial opportunities, especially on the film side of things, or even on the concert music side of things, what has been your guide as far as what you charge collaborators or partners to make sure that you aren't lowballing yourself, but also making sure you aren't offering a number that will cause the collaborator to move on to somewhere else?
Um, I'll say for the I'm really hesitant to even say that because I don't want people to walk away with a number
Of
that's not going to
course.
stem in their art, right? So that's the first thing. It's like, what is the relationship and what is the work and where is your value and like what do you need? I think that's those are kind of like the defining points. And then though, like it's so easy for us to shortchange ourselves. So have somebody else on your. And this is actually quite literally it. Have somebody else who can give you objective feedback about what the value is in this in whatever circumstance it is. So in this case, in Hollywood, it's my agent. Quite literally, quite literally. I don't even talk numbers, thankfully. Like I just, okay, great. We want to do this work together. I would love to work with you. Here's my agent's number. Give him a call when you're ready. Send him the contract. We'll get to move. That's it. Thankfully, I get to focus on the creative side of things. Um,
But maybe for composers who don't have that agent, I can think that talking to other composers might
Talking
be
to other
a good place to
composers,
start.
yeah, exactly. Talk to other composers. Really, Sphinx. Go to Sphinx, and this is something to talk about networking. Every time I go to Sphinx Connect, right? Go to Sphinx Connect, and every time I go, get that app and go through the list of who's there, and come up with a list of who you want to meet, who you want to talk to, who might be able to support what you're trying to create, right? And send a message, right? Have a coffee, and then follow up the next day,
And I'm
right?
sure that counts also for the League of American Orchestras conference,
Yes,
the big band
yes,
conference that happens in
yes,
Chicago,
yes, yes,
Arts Midwest,
yes.
Western Arts Alliance. We can go on naming all of
Yeah,
these conferences, but
yeah,
doing exactly what you're saying, making sure you
yeah,
know who you might run into so that
yeah.
you're prepared.
And just real talk. Like I mean, not to whatever, but I can't. I'm gonna just put it out there. Like, we're having this conversation right now. So whoever's listening, like, do go to Instagram, they find us, shoot a quick message. Hey, can we chat? Like, I think that in general, community wants to show up for community. Again, it's like as long as you're showing up not as what can you do for me, right? But how can we be in conversation? Um, I think that most people will show up for you. You know?
Well, speaking of community,
Yeah.
well, there's one more question. We do have one more minute.
Mhm.
How do you push forward and stay motivated once you have completed a commission and are trying to look for the next thing, but it seems to be taking a bit longer than you thought? So really staying in the game, staying
Mm-hmm.
motivated.
Well, yeah. I think about this a lot, actually, a lot. And not in those direct terms, but it's really about how do you keep your mind positive and thinking about possibility. I think that to me is the question. It's less about the commission, less about the job, less about the boyfriend, the girlfriend, or whatever it is that thing that you think you want, right? Or that's going to fulfill your heart's desire. Like, how do you constantly stay in a mindset of possibility and in love with the thing that you do or the things that you're doing? And again, I truly believe whatever it is, like, if that's how you wake up in the morning, is that's how you carry yourself throughout the day, if that's the conversations that you have with this open possibility, things are going to show up. It might take long, but you budget, right, finances, or do whatever you need to do so that you can do the things for the long term and keep that positive mindset. And I think things will happen. I do, but it's that's I don't know. I don't want to get into wishful thinking and all that, but I think that that's kind of where it is.
Sure, sure. Well, for
Yeah.
people who want to keep the conversation going with you, how can
Yeah.
they find you? How can they reach out?
They can go to my website, levitaylormusic.com, send me a message on there and I'll get it. Or you can go to my Instagram. I'll say typically I don't check my IG that much, especially if we're not already following each other. So if you shoot me a message there, I might not see it for a while, but I'll see it at some point as long as it doesn't look spammy. And, and I'll always respond. Um, yeah. So those are probably the best channels.
LeviTaylorMusic.com. Well, Levi, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been a great conversation. Appreciate you joining me today.
Likewise, thank you for having me.
And thank you to everyone watching for checking out this session. You will be receiving a link to a brief survey in your email for registering for this event. So keep an eye out for that. And please take the minute or two to fill out that survey. That would be greatly, greatly appreciated. Anatomy of a Commission is made possible in part by a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts. Additional support is provided by Augusta Gross, Leslie Samuels, Rob Mason, and the Virginia B. Toolman Foundation. I'd also like to thank the Eastman School of Music's Master of Arts in Music Leadership graduates for their contributions, in addition to contributions by Ari Solotov, Daniel Bernard Remain, Melissa Nan, Richard Roberts, Vanessa Rose, and everyone who's contributed to this program and its work over the years. I look forward to offering more for you in the future, but until then, thank you for your continued support of ACF. You can learn more about our other programs and our other offerings and upcoming events at composersforum.org. You can also donate there if you're so moved. Have a wonderful day and keep creating. Thank you, everyone.